of numerous books, fiction and nonfiction, including Beyond Repair, The Decline and Fall of the Central Intelligence Agency. We've asked him to address the question of the CCP's unrestricted biological warfare and how what he and I agree are kind of like what was once said about neutron bombs. Biological weapons are capable of killing all the people, but saving all the buildings. And whether that is in fact consistent with both the Chinese doctrine, its ambitions, and its strategy towards this country in particular. Let's go to the video with Sam Faddis.
One of the things that strikes me when we start talking about the CCP, biological weapons, pathogens, this whole ball of wax, is that like a lot of things, it's always being discussed as if it is a potential threat, as if it's a threat that may emerge at some point in the future. So no matter, even folks that are purporting to talk about this very seriously are always discussing it in some sort of abstract, theoretical sense. This is something that could be really bad down the road at some unspecified date if we don't do something. And as with many other threats that I would submit we're facing today, that's really all wrong. This is not an abstract thing at all, and it's not a potential thing, and it's not something that we're facing one of these days. We're facing this now. I mean, we are already at war with the Chinese communists in many respects, even if it doesn't look like a conventional war in the sense we define it. It's already happening, and when we look at the realm of biological warfare, biological agents, this kind of thing, I mean, this is about as real and as concrete as you can get. I mean, first of all, let's think of the backdrop here. There's no question about what the Chinese communist attitude is toward biological weapons. The whole concept of law of war in the Western sense, Geneva Convention, all that stuff, they have explicitly rejected that a long time ago. They said straight up, these are a bunch of rules that were made by Western powers because they are superior to us in conventional military capabilities, and therefore they're trying to say we have to fight them in a particular way because they know they'll win. So forget it. We're not doing that. We're going to do whatever it takes, completely unrestricted warfare, whatever it takes, no rules, everything's fair game. Okay, so we know that, and we know that they've explicitly said that about biological agents. We know that they have talked about biological agents and biological warfare being what they call the commanding heights in regard to military conflict. So this is how you're going to win. This is the decisive thing you're going to do. We know that they've even had concrete, specific conversation, there are multiple examples actually, about the concept of using biological weapons that would be targeted to particular ethnicities. This is basically the biological warfare as the equivalent of a neutron bomb. So you kill off the population, a specific population. You leave untouched the land, the infrastructure, everything. And then the Chinese can move in because the biological agent was not targeted genetically to attack East Asians. Okay, so this is bedrock. So there's no question that they're really serious about this and that they're not just having hazy theoretical conversations, they're working this. Okay, then we have the concrete examples. I'll cite only 3, but there are many, of how they're actually doing this. I mean, first of all, COVID. Now, we can argue about whether COVID was deliberately released or jumped the fence because the Chinese lab practices are horrific. But there's no question that it came out of a lab in Wuhan and that it was genetically engineered. It was a product of gain-of-function research for the specific purpose of more effectively killing people. And it got loose one way or the other, either deliberate action or negligence. And it did a pretty effective job of tearing the heck out of American society, politics, and the economy. And basically you talk about something that's a bad case of the flu, so it gets a lot worse from here. right? A couple of years ago now, we found this lab sitting near one of our key fighter bases in California, completely off the books lab run by Chinese, filled with all kinds of really dangerous organisms. One entire freezer that, although I think it was empty, was marked Ebola. So we could presume, as a matter of common sense, that they marked it as Ebola because at one point it was full of Ebola. We did basically nothing, by the way, to run that down. So where all those, why that thing was there, what its purpose was, and I don't know, where the heck is all the Ebola that was in that freezer? Nobody ever bothered to figure that out. We didn't run that down at all. We don't have any idea how many more such labs there are. Now we're confronting this business with the University of Michigan, where we've had now a total of at least 3 Chinese researchers, and by that I mean Chinese nationals, caught involved in bringing biological organisms into the United States in violation of all sorts of laws, and deliberately hiding them, smuggling them into the country to take them into a lab where they were all studying, in air quotes, and where they would work on these organisms. Okay, so smuggling them in. And by the way, all the indications are that not only were they deliberately smuggling them in other words, they knew the rules, they were deliberately smuggling them, but that they had done this multiple times before. So it's not just one time, it's been ongoing for, well, we don't know how long. As a kicker, the lab at the University of Michigan is run by 2 more Chinese nationals. I'm not talking just broadly ethnic Chinese. I'm talking Chinese citizens running a lab at the University of Maryland where we got other Chinese citizens conducting off the books, basically illegal research on dangerous organisms. And funding, a major piece of the funding for this lab, comes from U.S. government agencies. So if you're keeping track at home, that's U.S. citizens paying Chinese citizens to play with dangerous organisms and make them more dangerous on our soil. I should add, the third Chinese citizen that was arrested very recently was apparently bringing in a particular species of roundworm, and the press has kind of downplayed that, like who cares about roundworms or flatworms, whichever they were. The point is those worms are used to, you use those to test techniques on. In other words, the point is you're figuring out how to do things and modify things potentially in human beings, and all you're doing is using the worms as test subjects for these techniques. So this is not some obsession with worms. It is a much, much bigger picture. So we have a huge problem. Again, like with the lab in California where we never figured out how many there are, we have no clue how many of these people are smuggling things into the country right now, how many of them have been here for years, or putting any idea of what the totality is, the full scope of the organisms they're working with. So obviously we need to engage really, really rapidly here. Start by locking down this lab at the University of Michigan, shuttering the place, inventorying everything, and getting a complete handle on what the heck is going on here. And then we need to start expelling people from there. And then we need to do the same thing with every other significant biological lab in the United States. Not one of these days. We need to do this right now because we have no idea the full scope of the biological attack that may already be ongoing. Back to my original point, this is not a theoretical thing. This is not a one of these days thing. This is a right now, the attack is already ongoing and kind of thing, and you better respond before you wake up one day and find that we are facing something one heck of a lot worse than COVID on our soil.
Thank you. Bracing report, as always. And one that I did want to just correct a point. I believe that the Reedley Biolab did indeed have a freezer with the word Ebola in Mandarin on the exterior of it, but far from empty. As I recall, it was full of aluminum foil and plastic wrapped packages. And when the Biden administration, in its fashion, finally allowed the CDC to inspect this facility, they opted, I'm told, not to examine the contents of those because they did not have any indication on the exterior of them that they were, in fact, Ebola packages. So, to Sam's point, the administration simply had guys in shirt sleeves come in and cart the stuff off to some incinerator and burn it all up. A very odd story indeed, and possibly even more alarming if either of the two things that we've discussed, one, there are more of them, or two, that in the aftermath of its discovery, as Steve Mosher has indicated, they've simply started using our labs for this purpose. We're going to hear more about what the Chinese Communist Party's laboratories are up to and the extent to which their mission is deeply problematic, as well as the innovations and operations that it has spawned. From Sean Lin. Dr. Lin is a PhD, the co-founder of the CCP Biothreats Initiative, a senior advisor for the World Organization to investigate the persecution of Falun Gong, an assistant professor of biomedicine science at Fayette College in Middletown,